during those early years, it was really like soul searching of like, how do I fill myself up so that I can hold space for Chris, so that I can give my kids what they need. And the reality is you don't do that alone. Like no one tells you this. I think, like I feel like as new mothers, we think we're supposed to be doing it all ourselves. And then you realize like, if I do that, I'm going to be really bad at most of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so I really realized, like, where can I get help? Where can I, what can I let go of that doesn't really need done or isn't that important?
Or that you don't have to do.
Or that I don't have to do, so that I can focus on the things that matter, like giving space to Chris and like being that for him mattered to me. And our relationship has always mattered. And we've always made an intention to keep our connection important because you raise kids that are supposed to leave you, And so you pour all of this love into your kids and you really can lose yourself so easily if you're not conscious of that.
Yeah.
And I think that takes work. And I don't think anybody really tells any moms that, right? It's like you just have all this guilt because you're supposed to carry all this and do it while you look beautiful. And it's like, that's not real.
Yeah. So we're going to have a conversation and I think we're going to probably end up going a lot of places.
Yeah.
But this is basically a conversation about vulnerability and friendship and the kinds of relationships that we can attract when we show up as our true self and why getting to know yourself is important in order to be able to do that. This is also about the year that you've had. You've had a really big year of taking some really big risks and following your heart and your dreams. And I think us talking about like how exciting that is and then the reality of the challenges that come with that is really important.
Yeah.
And then we'll see where else it goes.
Sounds good.
So this is my friend, Melanie Hunter. She is one of the first people that I met when I moved here to Miami 2 years ago. And we'll talk about that process because I think that's funny. And Melanie's husband, Chris, is the owner and founder of Koya, which a lot of people probably know about the smoothies, right?
Yeah, plant-based protein. Yes.
Also Four Loko.
Yes.
Which I didn't actually know about in the past, but that had quite a moment.
Yeah.
In the 90s.
No. He started it after we got out of college.
Okay.
And so, my God, Four Loko days. Everyone has, if you drank a Four Loko, you have a story about Four Loko, right?
Yeah.
So
it was like the Red Bull vodka days?
Yeah, exactly. 100%. So I would drink like a half a can and go dance on top of a bar for hours. But anyway, that was forever ago. But like, it would have been 2009, 10-ish.
Okay.
No, that's actually not even true. It was before then. It was probably 2005, 6. 2005, 6, yeah.
Okay. And now you've got 3 kids.
3 boys.
In Center Academy. So we both moved here for the school.
Actually, I did not move here for the school.
Oh, that's right.
Found the school, thankfully, because we moved here and ended up at a school we did not love, but so grateful for Center, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And then this year now, your latest project, well, you guys are building a home.
We are.
Moving the family, and your latest project is listening to your heart and basically starting a company that you have been thinking about doing for a long time that ties into your nutritional background.
Yes.
As a certified holistic nutritionist.
You got it right.
And that launches soon. And so we're going to talk about all of that, what that is and what it entails, because it's a supplement that can actually help a lot of women. So we'll definitely talk about that.
Sounds good.
All right. So let's get after it.
All right. So I am a holistic nutrition consultant. I went back to school after being in sales. I sold actually pharmaceutical and medical devices outside of college. And then kind of went on this health journey, right? And kind of during that time almost rebelled against pharmaceuticals and all of those things and went very holistic. And while I'm still there, I feel like I've found like a very good balance in life, and I'm very much about balance. But I took a lot of years off to raise my boys. And during that time, I was going back to school. That's when I got certified to become a nutritionist. It's also, I got certified to become a breathwork instructor, and I took additional courses, and I'm just a seeker by nature, right? I'm curious.
Yeah.
And so I was home with my boys by choice, of course. And during that time, I was really, using it to educate myself and to propel myself into what I didn't know what was next, but just kind of following what was interesting and following my heart. And, I'm still in that process.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so huge. I mean, we talk about that a lot on, if we get to meet each week for coffee, I think these kind of conversations are conversations that I want women in my audience to hear, because I think a lot of us women, whether we have children at home or not, I think for so many of us, there is a calling in our heart. There is something that we want to do. There's something more out there for us. And I think a lot of times it's like a feeling. We don't necessarily know the what that it
Totally.
is. And I think the way that both you and I work, and these are a lot of our conversations that we have, is like, it's just about taking the next step.
Right.
And then having faith that the rest will get figured out, and not necessarily knowing how it's going to end up or what it's going to turn out like, or is it going to be successful, but knowing how it makes us feel.
Totally.
And knowing that that is such an important thing for us to lean into, because it changes how we show up for our families or for our friends or, relationships, all of it. Right?
Yeah, 100%. I think, it's so interesting. Being a mom is an amazing gift, right? And it takes so much. You give so much to these children. And that throughout that whole time, I felt like always there was just something in my heart that was like stirring, like there's more, right? There's more.
Mm-hmm.
And so the sitting in the not knowing can be really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And like for years I sat in this unknowing, right? And I think, it's such a journey. So I don't know that I can still even say like I'm doing something, yes, and that feeling has went away. And who knows what will come next, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think, it's just really like leaning into what feels right.
Mm-hmm.
And, you kind of like just take these breadcrumbs and go along this path and not knowing really where it's going to lead, and I did that for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like you're sitting in a big space of what that has attracted today with what you're launching and all the excitement.
Yeah.
And I think what's important is, kind of backstepping, and let's talk about how you actually were courageous enough and able to take these steps to like trust what you wanted and lean in. And I think, obviously relationship support is huge in that. We're very fortunate that we've had that space to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But I know you and Chris have also been through some like challenges in relationship, just like a lot of people probably.
Totally. God, there's so much in that sentence, right? Mm-hmm. Chris and I have been together for so long, so many years. I met him when I was 19 and, maybe I met him when I was 18. It's been so long. And I'm 43 now, right? And so we have grown up together, and there's been a lot of beautiful moments and some really ugly moments and some hard things that we went through too. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's like, that's life, It's like, I think that the human experience is so interesting because there's so much beauty there, but there's like really hard moments too. Mm-hmm. And you learn so much about yourself. And I'm so grateful. Like Chris and I have been through some it really has gotten us to where we are in a really beautiful place and a strong foundation. Mm-hmm. And he has been super supportive of me, and I have been very supportive of him, but that does not mean it's been an easy road,
Mm-hmm. I would say looking back, like what are, whether it was when you were in the trenches of like raising your children, or when, you were supporting Chris in building these massive companies, or now, feeling the fear, but doing it anyway and following what you're wanting to do. Like, are there certain like core values or principles that you've leaned on that have helped you gotten through and like taken the next step? So like, let's just go to raising children when you're in the thick of it and like, it's a day.
Yeah.
Like what are the things, because one of the things I want to say that attracted me to you as a friend is you're so freaking real. Like you talk about the difficult and the good, but you're also like I've told you, like my nickname for you is Joy. Like you're very joyful and always able to see gratitude in everything and take the good. But it's not like you're sitting here Pollyanna, like pretending that your life is okay. And that's why I wanted to bring you on here, because I think you're such a perfect example of like, yes, I'm doing this. And from the outside, it looks like I have this incredible, successful company and it just kind of came to me and life is easy. But that's just the way that you choose to live.
Right.
You also went through this, that, and that in order to get there.
100%.
You just didn't let that sink you. You kept going.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to your question, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, I don't even know where to start. But I do know that there's so many things. For one, it's like really tapping into what you need as a person and like how you're feeling, right? I remember when Chris was in his early days of starting one of his companies, I don't even know, to be honest, and we were out to dinner and I was like, I was just a stay-at-home mom, right?
Mm-hmm. And why is it just?
Exactly.
Why is it just a mom?
Because
we say that even.
Because we were at this dinner and it was very much like a business meeting. And I sat there and like no one asked me anything about, no one asked me what I did before I was raising kids. No one asked me about it. It was really basically like you stay at home with your kids, almost felt uninteresting, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was very much about Chris. And so I think that was like first and foremost, like a really interesting time in life because I was choosing to be a stay-at-home mom. Mm-hmm. And I gave up, I was making money prior to that. You give up all those things that you think are your identity.
Yeah.
And so I really had to sit with myself and be like, who am I?
Yeah.
How do I want to show up? And like what's important to me? Because I had to build myself up, no one else was like, no one is like, you're doing an amazing job as being a mom.
Amazing.
Right?
You get a raise.
Exactly.
You are the student of the month.
Exactly.
You're the employee of the month.
Right?
Like, we should do that on our wall.
We should. You are the mom of the month.
Me again.
In all reality,
you have cleaned all the countertops and handled all the emotional breakdowns, gotten the groceries, done the homework,
wiped butts, wiped tears, like, oh my gosh, did the dishes. And like, really what you get is like, your kids are like,
this for dinner again.
This, you made this. This is disgusting. Like, that's actually what you're getting. You're the worst. How many times have I heard my kids tell me the worst?
And then they tell you like, your kids projecting all their crap on you is really a compliment because they feel safe. Yeah. That's great. But like, I've been in the trenches all day. Can someone just tell me thank you?
100%.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting because, as a wife of an entrepreneur, I was also needed in a lot of ways to hold space for Chris because Chris is going through all of these things, right?
Yeah.
So like during those early years, it was really like soul searching of like, how do I fill myself up so that I can hold space for Chris, so that I can give my kids what they need. And the reality is you don't do that alone. Like no one tells you this. Yeah. I think, like I feel like as new mothers, we think we're supposed to be doing it all ourselves. And then you realize like, if I do that, I'm going to be really bad at most of this stuff, right? Yeah. And so I really realized like, where can I get help? Where can I, what can I let go of that doesn't really need done or isn't that important?
Or that you don't have to do.
Or that I don't have to do so that I can focus on the things that matter, like giving space to Chris and like being that for him mattered to me. And our relationship has always mattered. And we've always made an intention to keep our connection important because you raise kids that are supposed to leave you, And so you pour all of this love into your kids and you really can lose yourself so easily if you're not conscious of that.
Yeah.
And I think that takes work. And I don't think anybody really tells new moms that, right? It's like you just have all this guilt because you're supposed to carry all this and do it while you look beautiful. And it's like, that's not real.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm constantly telling you that you're amazing at and that you inspire me, and I think this is really important for really any woman, whether you have children at home or not, but you are, and I know you don't own this yet, but you are the CEO of your household. Like you do such an incredible job. And I think, like for me, I'm great at that in my work life, and I haven't yet mastered that as a mom. And I remember a long time ago when we first had babies, one of my patients said something to me that stuck with me, and that's like the one part I have worked on that with. She said, pay someone $50 to clean your house like once a week. And it's probably a lot more now, but so that you can be there to give your kids a bath.
Right.
Like, why do you need to be doing your floors and toilets when you really 100%. Want to be sitting next to your kid doing the bath? Like that is where you need to be. And so I think the message is like, as much as we can, delegating what we don't have to do.
Right.
And ultimately what happens is, especially if you're someone who, has a career and you can take that time and make money with it.
Right.
Come home, the house is clean and you just get to show up for your kids. Or like you do really good with asking for people for help with cooking.
Yeah.
Right? Like the way that you feed your kids is so important to you.
So important.
You take a little bit of a chunk of money.
Right.
You help someone make money.
Right.
And there's nights when in the craziness of everything you're juggling, you don't first have to figure out dinner.
Yeah.
Like those are genius moves. And I think as women, again, no matter if we have children or not, we have to see ourselves as the CEO of the household, if that's the role that we want to take on.
Totally.
Because we need help. We can't do it all. Like we are communal beings.
We are.
We need a village. Like everyone talks about it takes a village. Well, the reality is most of us don't have one. And so we have to create one. And so what can we do?
Yeah, 100%. I think for me, that came from like two different things. And one is realizing that my husband is great at so many things. And he is not interested in taking time out of his work schedule so that I can like go get my hair done, right?
Yeah.
And so we had small kids. I was like, okay, like that's fair. And my shadow side is very bitter. Like I can go bitter, right? So instead of going into that place, it's like, okay, I have needs that I need to fulfill. And so I have to, make sure that those are filled. No one else can do that for us, right?
Yeah.
And that, the cooking thing, Chris did Life Book and he came home and he's like, what is taking up so much of a lot of your time that you don't want to be doing? And I'm like, at that point in time, I'm like, I had literally kids on the floor who are like grabbing onto
tugging
my
at
leg,
you.
when you're trying to cook. And I'm like, cooking, it's so much. And so that's when we first started hiring someone to help us cook. And, it's not, ebbs and flows, right?
Right.
It's not always, but I think that just taking a look at your life and saying, where am I spending my time? Do I want to be doing this? Or how could my time be better spent? Right.
Right.
Like there's some non-negotiables. Like I love putting my kids to bed. Like I don't do it every night, but that's special time that I'm going to carve out. Right.
Yeah.
And what are those for us? Because we can't do everything.
No, we can't.
Yeah.
Or if we do, like to your point, what you said before, you're going to show up in a way that's resentful, edgy, angry.
Totally.
And I don't know about you, but what I so often find is like when I do make these like courageous moves to ask for help within the family and within the home, I get it back tenfold.
Yeah.
So like yesterday, you inspired me. I had someone come do laundry. And instead of spending all day doing laundry and doing the work, when I got the call that I needed to pick up my daughter early from school because she was sick, I was like, great, I've got everything I need for her. Like I got my work done. The house is picked up. It was $50 or whatever it was of like money so well spent.
Then it feels so
got
good.
to have dinner with my family. I wasn't angry, resentful, stressed.
Totally overwhelmed.
So
it's so easy to.
Yeah.
I mean, the list of things that we do like is insane, right?
It's insane.
So if you're not asking for help, like you're just bound to be overwhelmed and tired and angry.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't want to show up like that. And it still creeps up, right? It's like,
100%.
It creeps in, right? And then I'm like, okay, well, that's like, this is my bitterness coming through. So I'm not feeling supported. So how do I get that support? And maybe it's my kids, maybe it's my husband, or maybe it has to be outsourced. Yeah.
So Lifebook, you mentioned Lifebook. Talk to everybody about what Lifebook is and then how maybe if they can't access Lifebook, because I know that's kind of a big weekend.
Well, funny enough, I didn't do it, but I can speak a little bit to it because when Chris did it, our kids were young. And so I chose a lot of things to opt out of, which is funny, right? Because Chris he's a beverage entrepreneur. And so he's traveled quite a bit. And so the joke was always like, for years, no one knew I existed because I chose to be home with the kids. Anyway, so Chris did Lifebook and he came home, and really what it is just being intentional with your life, right? And like, what do you, I think this part is what Chris and I are really good at doing together. And if you can't do Lifebook, I don't know that it matters exactly, but I think it's like really sitting down with your partner and like, what's working in our relationship, in our family relationship, what is not working, what are we doing that we don't want to be doing, what do we have the funds to outsource, even joy, and like, are we happy? Like, I mean, I've said that to Chris before, like that needs to be our priority, like not all this other right? Yeah. But it's really just being intentional about life, I would say. I mean, is that what you would say from Lifebook?
Yeah, I remember. So when Jay and I went, it's basically categories that you focus on.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly what the categories are, but we've kind of made our own version. I know you guys do like a once a year too. So for us, we focus on family, fun, financial, career, I think learning, and then physical.
Very nice.
And so we go through each category and it's like, okay, what are we doing together? What do we each want individually?
Yeah.
And we lay out like our goals and intentions for the year. And I wonder if you experience this. There's something so powerful in just knowing what each other wants.
Totally.
And getting clear on it and saying it out loud, because I think even if you weren't trying, you end up showing up for each other and supporting one another, right? Like my husband was just doing capoeira outside. So like that's important to him. Just knowing I carve out the space. Okay, I got this. You go do that.
Totally.
And I feel like that's a big piece of making it work, right?
100%.
So I love Lifebook. I think, whether you do that with a partner or on your own, just walking through like once a year, twice a year, pick some categories, right?
Totally.
Relationship is a great one. What kind of relationship do you want?
Right.
Who do you need to be in order to attract that kind of relationship if you're not in one, right?
Right. And if you are, like, being brave enough to actually sit and ask the real questions, like, how are we really doing? Yeah. And it's hard and it's scary sometimes to be like, I mean, I've asked, like, are you getting what you need out of our relationship? And that's a very scary thing to ask, because there's a potential that it's no, right?
Yeah.
But it's so much better to actually deal with it and know that you're working on it together than like sweeping it under the rug, and then you wake up and you're like, it's too late to fix it, right?
Yeah. Have you ever gotten hard answers? Like,
I remember one time it was like, not hard, but like, yes, just in phases where we were disconnected, or phases where I was putting so much of my energy into the kids and he felt neglected or like not getting enough from me, which honestly is fair.
Such a reality.
Yeah. And it was fair. It's like, So things that are hard at the time to hear, right? And I think the reality of relationship is you go through peaks and valleys, right? Like
100%.
sometimes you're like so in love with each other, and other times you're just so busy that it's not like you fall out of love, but it doesn't become, it's just not the peak, right?
Yeah.
And so if you have this conversation, so you can bring it back and like have conversations of how do you, and there's so much actually excitement in that too, even though there's a lot of vulnerability and it's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you got something like that, like if you weren't paying enough attention to your spouse while the kids are little, like the reality as a mom is you're freaking spread thin and you're trying your best and you're also depleted. So
100%.
In a situation like that, like what did you do?
Well,
do you remember?
I remember specifically, it was something very specific, and it's true, is that we would be having a conversation and the kids would come in and they would steal my attention. And
I do that all the time still.
It's something I work on constantly, and I'm much better at it, but it's not perfect. But I know now, as soon as like
that's important to him.
It's important to him. It's very important to him. So we have, we continue to teach our kids and say, excuse me, or not interrupt unless it's emergency. And it's something we work on. But yeah, I was very much guilty of that. Like my attention immediately went to whatever their needs were, even though we were right here. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's been like an ongoing thing, but that was something that was like bigger when it first came up, because I didn't realize that it was bothering him and that I was doing it so much.
That's where, like, I was having a conversation with someone the other day and they're, thinking about having kids. And they were like, honestly, what are the hardest things? And I was like, you really want to know?
Yeah.
Here's the reality. Like, she's going to be exhausted. You're not going to get the attention that you're like, here is really what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
And in my mind, it's all about communication and support.
Yeah.
Right. What support does she need? What can you give her so that like when she's exhausted, you're not just then pulling on her asking for more, because you're going to get more from her when you support her.
100%.
And then it's the communication. So like knowing that your husband needed that.
Yeah.
Like Jason and I talk about withdrawals and deposits.
Totally.
So like how many emotional deposits are we making into each other's accounts, and how many withdrawals?
Right.
And if you're not having that connection time.
Totally.
And you have to know what your partner's connection is, right? There's something to be said about like the 5 love languages.
I agree.
Then when life happens, whether it's kids, work, whatever, it's constant withdrawals.
100%.
The kids walked up again, and of course her attention was gone. Like if you don't even know that.
Yeah.
Another place I want to talk about where is really important is in order to be able to be vulnerable enough to ask for those things, I think we first have to know ourselves well enough to know what it is that we need.
Oh, 100%.
Right?
100%. Yeah.
And I do see you and Cress both working on that.
Yeah.
So is that something you guys did from the get-go? Is that like, I know that's who you are today. Like I see you going to Joe Dispenza retreats. I see you meditating. I see you reading books.
Right.
I'm always picking your brains. Like I love the books that you're reading. You're reading a great one right now.
Yeah.
But was that always who you were? Or was that something that you found maybe when you got lost in mommyhood?
I think I have always been very curious, and that has led me plenty of places. But I mean, in our early days of dating, like I would literally bawl my eyes out while Chris is sleeping next to me, because I felt a disconnect, because he was not emotionally as available as I wanted him to be. And he would say this too. He's worked a lot on opening that up. And so for so many years, I felt like I was knocking on this door that just would not fully open. It would open a crack, and I needed more. But I didn't have the words or the awareness to actually verbalize that, right? So it has been a journey to actually be able to realize, I mean, and that's the thing, it's sitting with yourself, right? Like 100%. When I was young, my 20-year-old self was pulling from him, not knowing what I really needed, except for feeling, I felt lack, right? That I was wanting him to fill.
Yeah.
Once I was able to actually communicate, like, this is what I am feeling. It's not yours to fix, but this is what I'm feeling. And, this is what I need to feel supported. Then it starts actually working, For years, it really wasn't doing anything. I was just
complaining.
I was crying a whole lot. And he was pretty much like, she's just crying again, right? And so this will pass. And like, he grew up in a family that they didn't like talk about stuff. Like it was like very much like, you're mad and you yell at each other, and then the next day you're fine again, right? And so this was very new for us to be able to learn how to communicate. And, by no means have we reached like the mastery of it.
Of course.
It's still
there's
a
always
journey.
somewhere to go.
Oh,
yeah.
But we have gotten so much better at being clear. And I now know, like, I know myself better, which is such a gift, right?
Yeah.
So I know what I'm needing. And sometimes, like, I used to go and like cry in my room and wait for him to come get me.
Yeah. Save me like in the movies.
Seriously. They don't come. He never came.
Because they think if we leave, we don't want. And actually, I remember Jason early on when we were dating, he was like, listen, if you walk away, I'm not coming because I'll take that as a sign that you don't want me. And I'm like, actually, that works great for me because I don't want you to stay. Like, if I walk away, I need space.
But that's great. You guys had enough like awareness. At that point, we did not. So I was walking away waiting
we didn't
for
have
him
awareness
to come.
about a lot of other stuff. But like for some reason, it must have been maybe his ex-girlfriend was the other way. And he's like, just right out the gate. I just came off this burner.
You need to know this. Yeah.
Whatever it was, it worked for me.
That's great. I mean, that's a good thing to establish early on. Like, that took us so many years.
But you think about like that is where, I mean, communication is such a huge thing in relationships. Like that is where everything I feel like lives and dies. Like if we have the wherewithal to be able to say, here's my 10 weird things that I need. I don't know why I'm this way, but like, can you just know these things?
Totally. And actually it's such a great thing. Like, as you know, the weird part, it's like, I think that once we can get past being weird and just being like, this is me. And like, I think that's what actually has helped when Chris and I went through our hardest times, right? It also makes you realize like the humanness in all of us, that like you can love someone despite like the ugliness that is there. And that's hard, but it's also beautiful because it's like, oh my God, like you're going to still love me when you see all my ugliness. And I think that like in life, sometimes that's the most scary. Like, what if I show up and nobody accepts me with all of my ugliness, and it's like, oh, well, you do, and that's powerful. And then it's like allows you to step into that with other people where it's not so scary, you know?
I think that to me is our friendship. And I love that you got teary talking about that. And like, I don't know what's worse, showing that and having someone reject you, or never showing it and having people love you for who you aren't.
Right.
Like, when I met you, so I think right out the gate, like I just said it the way that I wanted to say it, and so did you.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know this, we lived in New Jersey for 14 years and we moved to make a move for our family to try something different. And like, I had this crazy realization as we were getting ready to leave that I didn't have a friend to say goodbye to. Yeah. And I have incredible, incredible relationships in my work family, in the office that we created there. I mean, those people I will forever be deeply connected to. And so I don't know if it was just a matter of like, I was in a very big building career year. I think that's honestly part of it.
Yeah.
But I think also, I realized that like when I came here, I was going to do it differently.
Yeah.
And I don't care if I have one friend or no friends, but like I am going to show up 100% who I am.
Totally.
And I remember at the beginning you asked me to get coffee, and I think like my initial reaction was to hide. I'm like, I don't want.
You told me no, but then I ran into it at the coffee shop, and I was like, divinely, we were brought together anyway. Yeah, 100%.
And I think it was just like, we both showed up like, here's who I am.
Yeah.
And it is scary and vulnerable because what if you're rejected? But I think what's also important as women is if that's not the person for you, then you'll find the one that is. And it's so
true.
It's so refreshing to have our friendship. And probably a lot of women listening to this have these kind of friendships. Right. I just didn't for a long time.
Yeah.
And for anyone who maybe doesn't have this kind of friendship, like, I feel like I got you as a reward for being 100% true to who I am. Like, I love you, Melanie. I'll meet you sometimes. And then please know that I'm not a super social person. Right. I like to be alone.
Yeah.
Like, don't forget about me. Don't think that I don't love you. But
like, but it's beautiful because it's, it's like when you can meet someone where they are and love them for who they are. And then the expectation is never like, I think that's actually the biggest thing is like in any relationship, if you can come whole and say like, this is who I am. And like, I'm going to share my struggle, but I'm not going to give you my struggle, right? Like, I'm not going to ask you to solve it. And I'm not going to pull from you because I don't need you you can be at home, you can do whatever. And when you're ready to play, I'm here to play with you. Right. And like, not just play, like, you'll hold my hard stuff or hear it and hold space for me. But it's like a different thing where I think that we're not pulling at each other, asking, I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not hanging out with you because I feel like I should.
100%.
And you're not showing up for me because you feel like you should.
100%.
Like you can be like, not feeling it today, can't do it. I'm like, great.
100%.
Honor that because I know I'm going to get a best version of you when I get to see you.
Totally. And
or a shitty version and I'm there for you.
Exactly. But honor yourself first, I think is actually the message where it's, it's like you do you and you take care of you and I'm here. And it's like, however that works, right?
Yeah. Because think about how many times we do it because we feel like we should.
100%.
How many times, I already see Kaya, my 7-year-old daughter, taking this on.
Yeah.
Like, couldn't do a sleepover the other day, wasn't feeling it. And she was crying. And she literally said, I can't get out of my head. Aww. I feel so guilty. Like, so she's hard. Freaking 7. Right. It's like, we come here with this.
I think we do come here with it. And also it's like, it's interesting because we raise our children differently than we were raised, right?
Yeah.
And so, no shaming. I adore my parents. They did an amazing job. And I was very much taught to be a nice girl, right? And so like getting out of that and being like, I'm still can be kind, but like it's not just doing things because you should or for other people that are depleting you, right? Like that doesn't actually serve anybody anyway. Yeah. It doesn't serve the person who you're with either. It's almost doing them a disservice.
Yeah.
But I think for people who don't necessarily have their person, because honestly, you only need like one person, but it's actually, I think it's interesting to know that first of all, I think you have to know that you have to be willing to also be that person, right? You have to be willing 100%. To be vulnerable to get that back if you're looking for that. Not everyone maybe is.
Yeah.
And second of all, I think that for years I felt like, it was like personal if someone didn't like me or something. And then I realized like it's actually just like we all resonate at a different energy and like we will vibe with some people more than others. And that doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just like we just vibe together and that's great. And if we don't vibe together, that, that doesn't mean anything about you or me.
Yeah.
Just is.
I think that's big.
Yeah.
Because I think, going back to our parents, like they did so much better than their parents. Think about the stuff that they changed, right?
Yes, you're so right.
And then for us, I think it's this lesson of like, I think for a lot of us women, girls, whatever, we were taught to care about others more than ourselves.
Yes.
Like that's what you do as a girl.
Totally.
That's your expectation. I think that's what we're breaking
100%.
For ourselves and for our daughters.
Totally.
So I love that you said like, be that person.
Yeah.
That's what I did. I was like, I did not have the village that I wanted for whatever reason. And so I'm going to be that village.
Yeah.
So like, who's the friend that I want? I want the friend who's honest.
Right.
Like when we first had coffee, you were like, I think I said way too much. I'm like, we're in. We're good. You have a vulnerability hangover.
I was like,
did I talk about my badge too much? Like, no.
Yes, 100%. I was like, oh wait, I'm
body parts, insecurities.
It's so true.
I love you.
Right?
And now you're not going to see me for 3 weeks, not because I don't love you, but because I'm going to go hibernate.
Right, totally. And that was okay. It's like, yes.
It's a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So I want to talk about your company that you just started. I want to talk about it for a few reasons. I want to talk about what it is, because I think there's a lot of people out there that this can help. And then even more importantly than that, I want to talk about the journey you've been on to go after it, because I think it's really brave and I want to like reverse engineer how you've gone through it for you.
Cool.
So the supplement that you're launching, I think very soon around the release of this podcast is called
alii. Okay. So alii is an overhead supplement brand is meant to address what's called drug-induced nutrient depletion. So if you take a pharmaceutical, often, most of them will deplete certain nutrients in your body, right? And so what we're launching first is alii for hormonal birth control, because it was super personal for me. I was on birth control for like 10 years. I started when I was 19 years old. I was in college and I remember asking the doctors, right? Like, what are the side effects of this? Like, what do I need to know? Like, not just one question, right? I'm like a very curious person.
Yeah.
And, I got very much a standard answer of like, it's completely safe and effective. Take it every day at the same time, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. So, during this course of 10 years that I was on birth control, I tried lots of different forms, but I also had lots of different side effects, right? I mean, like batshit crazy. Like there are times where I just uncontrollably cried. I had frequent infections. Like, oh my gosh, I remember my dad being like, "Why are you always sick?" And I'm like, "I don't know." I got diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome. And so, fast forward, I went back to school for nutrition and I learn that birth control depletes so many nutrients
for a long time,
for so many years, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, and at 19 years old, I'm like, I'm still developing. I'm still growing. Like,
right.
And you know, my diet in college was better than a lot.
I would imagine.
By any means.
Probably,
So I'm like, gosh, like how depleted at that point. And, you know, the other part of that was I got off birth control. I remember when we were ready to start a family and I went in and I was like, what do I need to do? And he's like, just take yourself off birth control. That was it, right? And so luckily I got pregnant after 3 months. But in retrospect, I'm like, I was depleted when I got pregnant with him. Like that is not giving my firstborn son the best start that he could have at life either. But I didn't know any better, right? And so I became...
Well, and you tried to know better. You asked questions from the experts.
100%. And I'm not one person mentioned nutrient depletion, right? And so that's why this is really like, became like a passion project for me. And starting a company is like so many things. I have watched Chris start many companies and I have been along his side watching him, and doing it and watching are so different.
How so?
Oh my God, I had no idea. I mean, until like you actually experience it, like it is so visceral. Like it is like, I dream about it. I I obsess over it. Like it's in me, but it's in me in a way where I'm like, feel so much. Like I since we met, I told you, like, there's just like this calling that's like yelling at me practically that like there's something for me to do. And that has quieted. And so I know like this isn't even a choice. Like I have to do this.
Yeah. It's coming through you.
It's coming through me.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, but still like it's scary. It feels very vulnerable. Like what if no one understands it? What if no one cares? What if it doesn't resonate? You know, it's like the financial part of it too. Like there's, you know, you put money in and you hope that, you know, it's just not wasting it. And then there's all these other things that come up about like failure and like self-worth and like, am I good enough? Do I have what it takes to run a business? Like, who am I? Who am I to start this? Right?
Like imposter syndrome.
So many things and so many things that I thought I had healed, right? Like I have been working on my self-worth for many years now and I've done a lot of work on myself. And then I'm like, oh, like I didn't really heal that. It's still there. Like the lack or question of my self-worth is still there. And I think that the good thing is that I'm thankful for all of that, right? And like, no matter what the end result, like this is something that I'm doing completely out of love. I really feel like there's a need for it because there's so many young girls who, just like me, will be on birth control for years and they don't know and they, you know, and you can do better, right? If birth control is the right option for you, which that is, you know, a personal decision. It's not me promoting birth control. It's if you're going to take birth control, let's support your body while you take it so that you're not depleted.
Right.
And so that's just very, you know, I'm very passionate about that. And so I feel like I told you this, but like, I feel like I've really had to sit in like, regardless of the outcome, this is something that is like a project of mine out of love that it has to happen no matter what.
Yeah.
And so I have to just sit in that knowing that like that is, and there's no question of doing it or not doing it. It has to be done. And I almost have to let go of like what happens with it.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about reframing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think 100% you've done a lot of healing and work. And what we're seeing is you're hitting a ceiling.
Yeah.
And so I think with each thing that we do, you're getting closer and closer to what we're here for, right? We have these conversations all the time, but when you feel that pull, like, it's like, I can't even figure out I can't figure out why or what it's going to look like, but I just know I got to go, right? Like when you've got that pull, we know enough to trust that that's right. And that's in alignment and everything will show up and everything will work out.
Yeah.
And along that way, because I've experienced this too. I think any entrepreneur has experienced this, and every woman is an entrepreneur. Mamapreneur, I think, is such a great term because to me, what that is it's having the willingness to be brave and courageous and take these risks.
Right.
And along the way, when stuff comes up, whether it's our insecurities, our feelings of lack, our feelings of failure, the conflict resolution we have to go through. I think having the mindset of an entrepreneur is just choosing to go in instead of out. And so I think we do this as moms with our children. Like, okay, we've hit a different developmental stage. Like what are the challenges and how can I go in and figure out, okay, how can I get better at this? Or how can I work on myself to make this happen better, rather than what's going on outside of me and blaming it on our children, or they're just in their twos or they're in their teens. Like, how can I show up differently? Because that's all we can control.
It's so true.
And I know along the way, like some of the things that you've done that you've felt called to, and I've experienced this as well, like it's not what ends up being it.
Yeah.
Right. So like, as my journey as a chiropractor, like I have gone through many morphs.
Yeah.
But I think the beauty and the magic is just in following that.
Yeah, I agree.
And I do think, you know, as a witness, as your friend, like you're definitely hitting on something that's pulling all of your stuff together, which is what's so beautiful about this company. And I think it's such a unique product because, you know, like you said, whether or not we're for birth control, the reality is that a lot of women are on it.
So many.
And a lot of us are on it in those like very,
developmental years.
Yeah.
100%.
And what happens from that? We're not getting those answers from the experts. And those are really crucial vitamins for prenatal women.
100%. And and if you think about, you know, the average age a girl goes on birth control is 16. So that's the average, right? So that means 13, 14-year-old girls are going on it. Yeah. And so these girls are growing, right? And like, I guarantee there's very few of those girls have a perfect diet, right? And even with a perfect diet, like we have nutrient depleted soil, like all these things, right? But you start with a probably poor diet, and then you add something that's depleting nutrients at a time that you need those nutrients. I mean, for mood, for gut, for your mental health, like I mean, so many things that are developing that you need, right? And so like these girls, it's like, oh my gosh, when I think of some days, like, what am I doing? Like, I'm spread way too thin. My husband's an entrepreneur. I'm raising my own kids. Like, what are you doing right now? I seriously think about my younger self, and I think about these girls, and I'm like, this is what I'm doing. Like, I am really trying to help and make a difference in these girls' lives, and I really believe that it matters. So.
So what is it exactly? So alii is a supplement?
Alii is a supplement that is 14 nutrients. It's vitamins. It's B vitamins, C, D. I won't name all of them, I guess, but very important vitamins and minerals: zinc, magnesium, selenium, CoQ10, and something called core biome, which is a patent ingredient that has been shown to support gut health because birth control is also hard on the microbiome. Okay. And so it's literally what is depleted by birth control plus gut support without the things that are thought to be elevated by birth control, because there are certain nutrients that actually can become elevated by taking birth control. So it's a very specific formula. So, you know, could you just take a multivitamin? Somewhat, yes, but this is very specific to what you need if you are on birth control. And if you want to avoid the things that birth control elevates, right?
Right.
And the reason is those nutrients are super important. Like, you need them. And so, it's therapeutic grade, like quality ingredients that I really believe in. It's something, you know, I would 100% take. Or
all your stuff in your home is super clean. Like, I know on the packaging, we can even share the links and all that. It's what, non-GMO?
It's non-GMO. I can't technically say organic yet because you pay for it. But it's a very clean supplement. It's made in a great facility that's ISO certified and GMP. Anyway, all of the things that you want. It's allergen free. It's very clean. It's exactly, I mean, it's what I would take, right? It's what I would give my daughter if I had a daughter and we were in the situation. It's
right. It's like, we don't know what we would do at those ages. Like 100%. We can sit here in the world that we live in now, in the health space, and talk about how bad birth control is. Right. And gosh, I can't believe we were all on it. And then the reality is when we have teenage daughters, like,
what do you do?
Right. We've even said, like, kind of glad we were both on birth control. Like, we were never forced to make a decision that was a really hard decision.
I'm so grateful for it. And I know plenty of women who have, right? Yeah. And I think that there's so much judging. And this is actually what I've realized. Like, yes, like I believe, you know, that we should try to do things holistically first. And I believe all these things, but judging, it doesn't get us anywhere. No. And there's so much shaming and judging. And I think like we have to stop that. Like, let's educate and empower people to make the best decision that they can for themselves, right? Yeah. And it's the same thing with, you know, like, things for mental health. Like, it's easy to be like, you shouldn't give your child that. And then if you talk to a mother who has, you know, who's dealing with a child who has mental health issues, like, unless
There's
you're
a
in there,
place.
there's a place.
Yeah,
Unless you're in their shoes,
yeah.
you cannot judge. I think that
Yeah.
there's so much shaming and judging, and I really think it needs to stop.
Yeah, particularly in the holistic health space, I think.
So much.
And it's like, can't we adopt this both and?
Right.
Like, can we be holistic and go have a dirty, what is it called? Dirty martini.
That's me, right? Yeah.
Can we be holistic
Yes.
and take an aspirin every now and then? Like, can we stop trying to fit ourselves into these boxes?
Right.
Especially as mothers.
Totally.
Like the moms that I would see on the table that would freak out over the paint that was going up in their home and oh my God, the toxins. Like, open your windows and do your best and take some charcoal.
Do your best. Yeah.
We have to just give ourselves grace too. I think the judgment
100%.
of ourselves is like a really big thing too.
And honestly,
explore as well.
we're adding so much stress upon what's already, if you think about toxins, you think about, obviously, this as a chiropractor and as a doctor, but you think about your toxic overload. It's like your bucket is full.
Yeah.
But stress adds to that bucket,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
So like us making ourselves so crazy that everything has to be perfect is not actually helping us.
Yeah.
I really, really feel like balance is so key. Yeah. And I try, how I live, like I live very clean, but is it perfect? No, because I used to aim for that. And that is a really, really disappointing road when you're aiming for perfection, because you will never be happy with yourself, right? And so instead, like, where can we offer ourselves grace? What can we look at? And like, what can we take out that's easy, and what else, there's just a place for certain things. And I think, not shaming ourselves is really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to touch on all the ingredients because I think they're important. So let's talk about, like, for anyone maybe who's listening to this and whose daughter is on birth control, or maybe who was on birth control themselves, like, let's talk about how we all feel on birth control, and then maybe some of the supplements that you're putting in and what their target is, right? So,
how you feel on birth control is interesting, right? Because you can ask, well, first of all, everyone has a story.
Yeah.
Everyone who's been on birth control has a story about birth control. Like, I've talked to many people, right? Some people think they feel pretty good, but they think there's almost always like, oh, I went on this one and, whatever happened. Felt crazy. My hair fell out. I had acne. Like I had, bloating. Gained weight.
Yeah.
Like my body changed. What else? Migraines, cramps.
Which don't you feel, I feel like there was, you think about the age that we all are when we went on this and like how much people can just default, oh, you're just hormonal, or you're just 100%. Like you were saying in college, you felt nuts. I felt nuts in high school. I remember going on one that we had like a backpacking trip in Utah, and my doctor was like, don't even do your regular pills. Here's a shot, Depo-Provera. I felt nuts.
Yeah.
But at what point are your parents or you like, well, maybe it's just my hormones. I'm a teenage girl. Like
100%.
That is not how it's supposed to feel.
Well, plus think about like how getting to know yourself takes so much time, right? So when you're a teenager, those are already rocky years, and you're trying to figure out who you are. And like, that's very much like a battle as it is. And the thing that we're not taking away, you're still taking hormones, right? So the hormones are still going to affect some things.
Through the birth control, you mean?
Yes. And so Alli's not going to address that because it can't, right? The hormones are doing what they are doing to prevent pregnancy or whatever reason you're on it.
Right.
However, the part that was like, pissed me off was like, oh, by the way, it depletes your B vitamins, vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin E, zinc, selenium, magnesium. And you need those, like magnesium alone. Magnesium is responsible for 300 to 600, depending on who you ask, enzymatic processes in the body.
What does that mean?
So basically, like all the things that's happening just for you to sit here or like have a conversation or to process nutrients or like all of the things that are happening that we don't see, the chemical reactions. Yeah. Yes, it is needed for. And
so get rid of that.
Right?
In your peak hormonal years.
Yeah.
Puberty, everything else going on.
Right. And by the way, 75% of us are already deficient in magnesium, right? Without taking something that depletes it. So that's just one. So then let's talk about like your immune system. Like your immune system needs vitamin D. It needs vitamin C. It needs selenium. It needs zinc. Your thyroid, you need selenium. Like a lot of these things, this is what I think is really interesting. A lot of birth control side effects, like hair loss, can also be tied to nutrient deficiencies, right? So like vitamin D is one of them. Like mood, B vitamins are so important for mood balance and magnesium also. There's so many things that, but so they correlate very well with the it's with the side effect of birth control. And so is it the hormones of birth control or is it the nutrient deficiencies? And I think the answer is both. And we can take care of the side that's nutrient deficiencies, right? So we can support your body in that. And so, and like I said, I ended up with irritable bowel syndrome when I was 20 years old or something. And when I read about what the pill does to the microbiome, I was like, oh my gosh,
Like, duh.
right?
Yeah. If it's not all of it, even,
Like 100%.
Why not just work on the part of it?
100%. And maybe it's not all of it, right? I did lots of dumb things when I was young. So, but it's a piece of the puzzle, right? And so like, let's address the piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And I didn't do anything when I was 20 years old to support my gut. Like I didn't know, I didn't know, but I literally then dealt with irritable bowel syndrome for 20 years, right? And it's like, wow, like what if we could nip some of these things in the bud and support these girls' bodies during these really important developmental years? And I think like that's so important. And I think most chronic diseases come from a toxic overload and nutrient deficiencies. And so, like let's address like the low hanging fruit. This is relatively easy. It's three pills a day that you would take with your hormonal birth control, and then you will not be depleting all of those things.
Insane. Like, why wouldn't you? You take them at once? Take all 3 at once or throughout the day?
I would take them all at once. It has vitamin D, so I would take them in the morning because vitamin D, as you know, is the sunshine vitamin, but it's also a hormone and it can affect your circadian rhythm. So you don't want to take vitamin D at night. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. And then you have ideas of doing this for other drugs, right?
And that's, I mean, that's the goal. Without taking, investors' money, it's going to be a process. But yes, 100%, because it's the same thing. So you want to talk about mental health and antidepressants. Antidepressants deplete other things that are needed for mood balance. So I'm like, God, what a shitstorm that you go on an antidepressant because you need help to get to base level to be able to do things, right? But while you're doing that, you're depleting the things that you need for mood balance, for mental health. And so, yes, I have multiple formulas that are ready. Basically, it's just a matter of timing of releasing. So
it's such an important product.
Thank you.
So important. What are the biggest things you've learned along the way? You said it's been really interesting. You've watched your husband build and it's different as you're going through it. So like,
so different. I mean, I think it's been more about myself. What have I learned about myself? Right. And I think it's like, the questions of like, am I enough? And do I have what it takes to do this? Keep coming up. And I think that, I find myself being like, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm a nutrition consultant. Yeah. And I'm like, that's interesting. I just caught myself saying that again. Right. And it's like, so it's bringing up all of the things that my doubts myself, my lack, if you will, that I thought I had pretty much taken care of. Right. I mean, not entirely. I knew it's still there, but I've grown so much and I thought I healed a lot of those. And I think that's been the biggest lesson for me is like, it's really vulnerable and scary to stand up and do something different and not know how it's going to be, if it will be well received. And so that's what I felt. But I do also, like I said, feel like it is so in me that it's like, okay, I don't know the answer to these questions. Like, I really don't. But what I do know is that I'm doing it anyway. Right. And so that's what I keep telling myself is like, I am enough to do it because I'm doing it. Right.
Yeah.
And whatever the outcome of it is almost can't be tied to, like, I don't want it to be ego driven at all. Like, it's not about that. It's really about, can we get this out to who needs it? And out of love to help support their bodies. And I hope so. And if not, it's, I have to check myself that this is not a definition of who I am, will not define me, and whether it works or it doesn't work, I am still the same human, right?
Right. Well, we've talked about like mission-based, like you said, doing it out of love and not necessarily tying your identity or your self-worth to selling a certain amount of these, because the reality is these women need you.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why this product is coming through you.
Yeah.
And I do feel like you've worked on a lot of that stuff, and you've probably chipped away at a lot of, like in Michael Singer's book, I love, he calls them samskaras, these things that we feel that we hold within us that different situations bring to the surface.
Totally.
And I think, the kinds of relationships that I've attracted into my life, because maybe it's a reflection of what I'm doing. Maybe this is a reflection of like women in our 40s. I don't know, if you just get to the place where you're like, screw it, I'm going in.
Right.
But it's like, as that stuff bubbles to the surface, we actually take it head on.
Yeah.
Because I think we've realized that each time you do that, there's an insane there's an insanely beautiful growth opportunity that then attracts more into your life. So even though it's scary,
Totally.
it's this willingness to take that next step.
Yeah. 100%.
Because you trust that there's something beautiful for you on the other side.
100%.
So when you have those feelings, those doubts, like, what do you do?
I mean, I'm so blessed, I feel like, in this point in my life that I have so many tools, right? So I know myself well enough to know, like, what am I really feeling and what is actually coming out and what do I need in this moment?
Those are good questions. What am I feeling?
What am I feeling? What
What's
do I
coming
need?
out?
What's coming out? What do I need in
What
this
do I
moment?
need in this moment?
And, it's not always, though. Sometimes you have to dig deeper, right? Sometimes I'm like, I think I'm mad at my husband.
But it's really about?
It has nothing to do with him. Like,
Yeah.
it has to do with me feeling maybe lack of support, but it's not directly him, right? So it's like sometimes it seems like an easy question, but like there's layers to that.
Yeah.
And I find so many tools, but like sometimes it's as simple, like sometimes it's journaling, sometimes it's literally like being outside by myself. Sometimes it's meditation, sometimes it's reading, sometimes it's a bath. I mean, there's so many things. It's, exercise, cold plunging. There's so many tools that I have, but it's almost like the tools you are important, but like the questions before are more important, because I don't think often we sit with ourselves long enough to really understand like what is actually happening for us right now.
Yeah.
What is this really about?
Yeah. It's beautiful. It's like the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
I love that, asking the question.
Yeah.
I think what I found too, and I feel like as women, we are so freaking good at this that it's scary, is when the bubbles up, we distract ourselves.
Oh, so easy to do.
It's so easy to be busy. And I think it's so interesting the play on the words busyness and business. Like I have distracted myself in my business so much. Like I don't have time to feel this. I got to pull it together and get to work.
Right.
Like how often do we do that?
Oh my gosh.
And the reality is, I'm curious your thoughts on this. The feelings are not that scary.
Yeah. No.
It's a willingness to sit with them. And it's almost like I visualize them now like a child. Like they just want my attention.
Yeah.
There's nothing that I have to do.
Yeah.
There is no expectation other than to sit with them.
It's so true.
So like if I use a tool of a bath, right? Or getting in the sauna or going for the run, like I'm trying to be very intentional about not distracting myself out of it, but like sitting with it for a minute and asking the questions.
Totally.
What is this actually about? When have I felt this before in my life? Oh, that's so interesting.
Right.
Becoming the observer, I think, is so powerful too, right?
So powerful. And you're so right, because the tools actually are like almost like another phase, right?
They're like creating space.
Yeah. So actually that's what's really important, because the tools are like, I think after I process it, I understand what I'm actually like, what's happening. I know what I need. And okay, now I'm ready to like shift.
Yes.
So I'm going to use those to shift. Right.
Yep.
But really like the work is done sitting with yourself and
and
understanding what this is actually about. Right. And I think it comes up with anyone. It doesn't matter if you're, business. I mean, especially as a mom, like I was driving yesterday and I was like thinking like, can I have a drink tonight? And then I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Like, why do you want to drink? And so I sat with myself long enough to realize like, I'm just tired. Like I actually just need a break. Anyway, and I didn't have a drink because I didn't want to drink at that point, because once I actually understood, right? So like, that is the most important thing. Like, are we actually sitting with ourselves long enough to know what we need?
Yeah. I think that's huge. It's the space.
Yeah.
I've been a shifter my whole life. Like, okay, feel yuck, go for a run.
Right.
I think there is the importance in the state change, getting yourself out of it.
Right.
And like you said, the space is the magical place.
Right.
And again, asking the questions are so powerful, and getting intentional with before you have a glass of wine. Like, is this the check out? If I choose to do that, great, fine. But can I first check in?
Yes.
Why do I want to check out today? What is it about today that's hard? And can I just meet that for a minute and then sure, go for it.
100%.
But that is such the difference, right?
It is such the difference. And it's intentional living, right? And it takes work, and it can be scary, because sometimes the answers can be hard too, right? It's like, you go through a lot of things, like parenting can be hard, relationships can be hard. And so sometimes I think we're afraid to ask those questions because we're afraid of the answer, but it's so much it's always better to know what we're actually upset about and dealing with than to sweep it under the rug, because it will always resurface.
It will. It always will.
It always will.
Yeah, in some way, shape, or form.
And it'll come back bigger and louder if you don't pay attention to it, right?
My friend has this cool quote he shared. It's messages will come to us in hertz, Hertz, like sounds, short little whispers, or in hertz, Hurts.
Totally. It's so true, right?
It's like you need a day of rest. Yeah. You need a day of rest. You need a day of rest. We don't get it. And then boom, you're sick.
100%.
It's a perfect example.
I realized that last time my family was all sick, I said to Chris, I was like, I am aware of the fact that I I do not choose this to take time out, right? Like
Mhm.
as a mom, sometimes we don't stop until you have to stop. And
Yeah.
so I was like intentional about, I'm going to let myself rest and recover and take the time so I don't get sick, because I don't need that out, right?
Yeah.
But like it takes a lot of intention to go through that process.
Yeah.
But it's available to everyone, which is so great, right? Like none of the tools really matter. It's really like that process
Yeah.
that's free and accessible to everyone to go through, you know?
So where would you say, like, one of the best resources I've had in that process is, I love Michael Singer, Untethered Soul.
So good.
What would you say? Like, if someone's hearing this and they're like, okay, that sounds good. Like, I don't know how to ask myself those questions.
You know, I don't know. Part of me wants to tell you a book, and the other part of me is like, really believes that we are all offered tidbits of information, right, along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I could tell you a book that worked for me, but I don't know that that's the book that's going to work for you.
True.
So what I would say is that it really, even if you don't know how to ask the questions, you don't need to. Like, just sit with yourself and feel what you feel without trying to judge it or name it or push it away, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then see what comes. And maybe nothing comes right away, right? Like, I think we spend so much time being busy and blocking things and numbing and distracting that like it might take time. But that intuition is available to every single one of us,
100%.
right? And so I don't know that I want to tell you what got me to mine, but I think that the answer is you just keep sitting. Like you just keep, you're committing to yourself that you are going to sit with yourself. And especially when you feel all these feelings that feel really hard, that you are going to sit in it for 5 minutes. And even if nothing comes of it, you are going to consider that a success because you sat, and you're going to come back to yourself again tomorrow. Right. And I think that that's like learning to trust your intuition is like the greatest gift you can ever have. And 100%. I remember reading I looked up a book years and years ago because I was like, how do I listen to my intuition? Right.
Yeah.
And like the book gave me nothing. And then I actually thought about it after. I was like, what was I expecting from this book? Right.
Yeah.
But like, we want like a how-to, but like it's in us. All it is just like be quiet and allow. And like that takes practice because we're a very busy society. Yeah. But like that's it.
I think that if I could be like, there is one take-home message from this entire episode, it is that.
Yeah.
Because I think every one of us wants stuff spoon-fed to us.
Right.
And the reality is when you can tap into that intuition that we all have, especially as women, it is our God-given right. We come here with it.
100%.
We have distracted ourselves out of it.
Yeah.
You don't need anyone.
You don't need
anyone's answers.
No.
You can have, I even get to the point where I have fake conversations with people now and I get my answers.
Yeah.
I'm like, what would I say with Melanie if we were sitting for coffee? Well, I'd say this and then Melanie would ask me this and I'd say this.
Perfect.
But here's my question.
Okay.
This isn't asking for the to-do, but it kind of is.
Okay.
So pretend, let's just say there's a woman listening to this and she's like, that sounds great. How the hell do I sit with myself? So like, walk me through your process. Is this something you do in the morning? Do you do it at night? Is there a certain spot that you sit? Do you have music on?
Okay.
Like, what is this? And then I also want to talk about, how do you know if you're doing it right? Because I think that's an interesting conversation.
Okay. So it's going to be a longer answer than maybe it should be. But okay, so I do have a meditation practice and I'm very committed to meditating. I meditate in the mornings because that's where I can be most consistent. So that means I set my alarm and I do not love waking up early, but I do it anyway. I do it anyway. Because I am a better human being when I do.
So you think of the end result.
100%.
Yeah.
And the way I feel is like night and day different. I know it, right? And so I have a meditation practice in the morning. However, I will also say that, each day is different. So today I was like having felt so heavy and I had already meditated. And so I sat with myself and was like, what do you need? Right?
The question.
It's
the questions.
Yeah. So I feel
powerful.
So I feel like it's two things. Like it's not always the same thing. Like I get amazing things out of meditation and like, oh my God, I'm so grateful for meditation. And sometimes there's still just stuff going on that like needs something else. It just needs my attention. And it's literally just that. What is really going on with me?
Yeah.
And I think that, it's hard as a mom. I understand. Like sometimes we can't pee by ourselves and our kids follow us every single place. Right.
Yeah.
But really, when we're being honest with ourselves, if you are dedicated to something, you will prioritize it and you can make the time.
100%.
Right.
If it becomes a non-negotiable.
It's non-negotiable.
It happens.
It does.
Yep.
I mean, I first started meditating when my second son was a baby. He was like 3 months old, maybe. And
Wow.
I remember Chris saying he had already started meditating, and he said, go meditate. And I said, I don't have time. And he's like, you have 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And he's right. And honestly, it's since then, I'm like, if I can't find 5 minutes, like that's on me. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think also though, an easy place to start is like mornings and nights, because you lay in bed and like, what are you doing during that time? A lot of us are scrolling.
Yeah.
And if you choose to do that, fine. But can you also give yourself 5 minutes to actually check in with yourself? And how was your day? Did you meet your needs? How are you actually feeling? And like, what do you need tomorrow? Right. And that's like time that we all have to, if we choose to take it.
It's so true. There's that quote. It's like, if you don't have time to meditate twice a day.
Yeah.
Like, figure it out.
Figure it out. Right.
But I want to go back to like just asking yourself questions. So like you were saying, you meditated this morning, there was still something a little off, and you simply said, what is it that I need?
Yeah.
That is one of my favorite questions that I ask myself. It's pause, take a minute. What is it that I need?
Right.
And the answer can be something as silly as, you know what, I really want to go get an almond latte.
Right.
Like that would bring me so much happiness.
Totally.
Or what is it that I really need? I need to not freaking put away the laundry again today.
Right.
Okay, great. Take a day off.
So true.
It's like you ask yourself the questions that you would want someone else to ask and support you.
Yes.
We become that best friend that we needed on the outside.
So true.
And then you come from a place of not needing anyone,
right,
but desiring relationships.
Totally. Which just feels very different energetically too. Yeah.
I want to talk about like, you know, am I doing it right? Because I think one of the greatest things that I heard in this process of like sitting with myself was you're going to feel like you're doing it wrong. It's going to feel unfamiliar. You're going to feel like my head went the whole time. Like I used to be very intimidated to meditate because I thought meditating had to be like, I was in this space of nothingness and pure bliss. And I would sit to meditate and I'm like, the to-do list, the chores, what am I supposed to be doing?
Totally.
My back hurts, my butt hurts. Like, that's it. Like, you're doing it right.
So true. 100%.
You're just sitting with it.
You are. Yeah.
And I think I want to create this movement of like, who is this voice in your head? And can you align with her and become her best friend? Like, what if you hear this inner chatter and you start to like get to know her and you're like, God, that girl does not stop.
I'm like, what if you don't like your girl?
I think for the here's my theory. I think we probably won't.
Yeah.
But think about that girl has been trying to tell you for so long, I need a rest, I need a rest. And we like put our hand over her mouth.
100%.
So she's not going to talk nice to us.
Right.
So what if instead we're like, oh, are you saying you need a rest? Let me meet you there. Like, I know
So
it sounds
true.
crazy, but
No,
freaking
no.
talk to ourselves all day anyway.
Totally. I mean, but that's the thing. Like, it's not crazy because we all do it.
We do it.
It's
There's
just like,
this voice chiming in. Like, what if
Always.
you actually listened to her?
100%. And
God, I'm burnout. I don't want to do this. Oh, okay.
Totally.
What is it that you actually need?
Right.
I'm going to give you that.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah. With the puppets. If you bring puppets out, we might be crazy. But yeah, there's so much. I mean, I think we all have this internal dialogue. And honestly, like, I was just joking about not liking her because sometimes like you don't and sometimes you do. But in all reality, all of that inner voice is asking is like attention or like to be listened to or to be loved, right? Instead of like just constantly running ourselves ragged and not paying attention at all. And like the relationship with self is so interesting because I think like, I don't know that I was ever taught that you're supposed to have a relationship with yourself. And it's actually the most important relationship you will ever have.
The most important.
You know? And I think that's so interesting. like, get to know yourself. Like, who are you and who do you want to be? And like, what is that inner voice asking of you? And that's like a really beautiful thing when you do get to know yourself.
Yeah. I think that is a great place to wrap because again, like if there is one major takeaway, it's go check out Alii supplement.
Thank you.
And get to know thyself.
Get to know
like
thyself.
It's so cliche, but it's so true and so real.
So powerful.
So where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Holistic Health with Mel. You can find Alii on social at Alii Supplement or online at aliisupplement.com. So
Awesome. I love your Instagram. Just a fun resource. You kind of cover all the bases of like healthy living with kids, following your heart, living with intention, all the
Thank you.
things. It's such a
Mixed
great
bag of real life, basically.
yeah, and like uplifting. So I love it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed. We would love to hear your comments below. If you liked this episode, go ahead and throw a like. Comment suggestions below, any feedback, any questions for either of us would be great. And as always, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.